Beis Mishnah Aleph. Shvius Perk Beis Mishnah Aleph. Ad Emas HaChoshim Misteh Halov and Erev Shvius. In Perk Aleph, the Mishnah taught the halacha of plowing a field in which trees are growing during the year before Shemitah. The Mishnah now goes on to discuss plowing a field where grain or kitnius will be planted. There's a basic difference between plowing a field of trees and a field of grain or kitnius. When the Mishnah discussed plowing a field of trees, it was speaking about plowing a field in which trees have already been planted. A field of grain or kitnius, however, is plowed before it is planted in order to prepare the soil for planting. So until when may we plow a grain field, literally a white field? Steh halovon means a white field that is a grain or kitnius. Such a field is referred to as white field because there are no trees to provide shade and darken the field with their shadows. Until the moisture and most of the wetness from the winter rain dries up. In Eretz Yisrael, the rainy season lasts throughout the winter months, with the final early summer rains falling in Nisan. Once most of the moisture has dried up, it is no longer mutter to plow the field. There is usually a large amount of moisture left in the ground until shortly after Pesach. This time is earlier than the end time for plowing a field of trees discussed in the first parak, which is at the time of Shavuos. The difference between Esteh Ha'ilon and Esteh Lavan is as follows. Plowing is mutter during the year before Shemitah as long as it benefits a crop at the sixth year. The purpose of plowing a field that has been planted with trees is to allow the water to seep down to the tree's roots. In that case, since the trees have already been planted, plowing the field is beneficial even if there is just a small amount of water in the ground. Therefore, it's mutter to plow as long as there's even a small amount of moisture left. Other fields, however, are plowed before they are planted in order to prepare the soil for planting. This requires a larger amount of moisture. Therefore, the deadline for plowing a grain or kitnius field is earlier. So, which is as long as people are still plowing in order to plant melon and gourd fields. What is this? Says explain. Once the harvest season has begun in Nisan, grain is no longer planted. Melons and gourds, however, are still planted as long as most of the moisture in the ground is still there. Since there's still a large amount of moisture in the ground, these crops of the sixth year can still be planted. Since plowing the field prepares the soil for the crops of that year, it is permitted. Once most of the moisture has dried up, however, and people no longer plant even melons or gourds, the field is no longer plowed for that year's crop. Therefore, it's also to plow a field, since it appears that it is being done for the purpose of the following year, which is Shemitah. As long as there's still some moisture in the ground, people who see someone plowing his field will assume that he plans on planting gourds and melons there. Therefore, it's mutter to plow there, even if we are not planning on planting gourds or melons, but are plowing for the benefit of the land, which can become ruined if not plowed. However, once there is not moisture left, people will think that they are plowing to prepare the soil for Shemitah. Therefore, it's also to plow then, even if you're doing it for the benefit of the land. Reb Shimon says, you have put each individual's law in his own hand. One landowner will say that there's not enough moisture in his land and stop plowing, while the second landowner will claim that there's still moisture in his land and continue plowing. Since every plowed land is different, people can easily make a mistake and think that their land is still moist enough. Rather, every field has the same halacha. We may plow a grain field until Pesach and a field of trees until Shavuos. After this time, anyone who is plowing the field is likely doing so in order to prepare the soil for Shemitah. As mentioned earlier, the halachas apply only when the Beis HaMikdash was standing. After the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Rav Gamliel paskin that it was mutter to plow any field until Shemitah actually begins. Mishnah Beis. The next Mishnah is discuss which field-related activities may be done throughout the sixth year. As a general rule, activities are permitted during the entire sixth year if either number one, they benefit the crops that grow during the sixth year, or number two, they are the types of activities that during Shemitah itself are only asur midrabanon and not midaraisa. The Torah specifically prohibits only 4 types of activities during Shemitah: planting, pruning a grapevine, cutting off dried branches so that the vine grows better, harvesting grain, and picking grapes. Plowing, although it's not specifically mentioned in the Torah, is also asur minat Torah. Certain other activities are going to be asur midrabanon. So, we may scatter fertilizer and hoe in the soil in fields of melons and gourds. You're allowed to fertilize and hoe in the soil which is at the base of the trees. In areas that were hard to plow with a regular animal-pulled plow, such as the area around the tree, people would dig up the soil with a handheld tool like a hoe. During Shemitah itself, this is asur minat Torah, just like plowing. So this is mutter until Rosh Hashanah of the 7th year. Melons and gourds grow even during the summer months, and scattering fertilizer and hoeing the field benefits the plants of the 6th year. Therefore, it's permitted during the entire 6th year. Spreading fertilizer is mutter until Rosh Hashanah, since it's usher only midrabanan, not minatera. Plowing and hoeing are permitted until Rosh Hashanah, since they benefit the crops of the 6th year. Although the previous Mishnah taught that plowing a field is usher after a certain point in the 6th year, that applies only when the plowing is done to prepare for planting. If the plants are already growing, plowing for their benefit is mutter until Rosh Hashanah. So too, he may spread fertilizer on hoe an irrigated field, which means a field that will not grow without watering it, until Rosh Hashanah of the 7th year to benefit the plant of the 6th year. Because it needs a great deal of water, an irrigated field's crops take longer to grow and are still growing during the summer. Therefore, as with melons and gourds, it's mutter to hoe the soil the entire 6th year, since it's for the benefit of these late season crops. Miyablin, more activities that are permitted during the entire year before Shemitah. Miyablin, we may remove wart-like growths from the tree. Mefarkin, we may cut down extra leaves from the tree so that the tree doesn't become burdened by them. Ma'avkin, we may spread dust over the tree roots that have become uncovered. Ma'ashnin, we may cause smoke to blow around the tree in order to kill worms or insects that live there. Ad Rosh Hashanah, until Rosh Hashanah of the 7th year. These activities may all be done throughout the 6th year, because even on Shemitah itself, they're forbidden only midrabanan. Rabbi Shimon Aimer, Av Neidel hu has ha'olam and ha'eshka b'shvius. The Tana argues that one of these activities is mutter even during Shemitah itself. Rabbi Shimon says that one may cut off extra leaves from a cluster of fruit, even during Shemitah itself, because his intent is merely to save the tree from being damaged and not to help it grow. The Chachamim agree that a person may do work during Shemitah if it's only to save a tree from damage. However, they hold that cutting off extra leaves is usher, since to a certain extent trimming the leaves will help the tree grow. Mishnah Gimel. Masaklin ad Rosh Hashanah. We make clear stones from a field until Rosh Hashanah of the 7th year. The midrabanan, it's also to clear stones from a field during Shemitah, because like plowing, it prepares the ground for planting. Since it's usher only midrabanan during Shemitah, it's mutter during the entire 6th year. Mekarsimin, we may prune a tree, which is that we could cut off the dead branches to make the tree stronger. Although pruning a grapevine is usher min Torah, pruning other kinds of trees is usher only midrabanan. Therefore, it's mutter to prune any tree other than a grapevine during the entire 6th year. Mizarden, we may thin a tree, cut off some of its live branches so that the remaining branches grow better. Mefaslin, we may remove the decayed parts of a tree ad Rosh Hashanah until Rosh Hashanah of the 7th year. Since these activities are also only midrabanan during Shemitah, they're permitted the entire year before Shemitah. Rabbi Shua says, just as thinning branches and removing decay that grow in the 5th year is mutter in the 5th year, it's mutter during the 6th year. So too, thinning branches and removing decay that grow in the 6th year is permitted even during Shemitah. According to Rabbi Shua, this is permitted since he's not trying to help the tree grow, but simply protecting it from being damaged. For this reason, Rabbi Shua also permits pruning a tree during Shemitah. The Chachamim, which is the Tana Kama, this Mishnah, however, hold that these activities are forbidden during Shemitah, even though the Chachamim permit many activities during Shemitah in order to save trees or fields from damage. Not all activities were permitted. Rabbi Shimon says, as long as I'm allowed to perform other kinds of work on the tree, such as plowing the soil around it, I'm allowed to remove its decay. Once it's forbidden to work the tree, however, I may no longer remove the decay. Rav Shimon taught in the first Mishnah of this parak that a field of trees may not be plowed after Shavuos at the 6th year. It is thus forbidden to remove the decay from a tree after Shavuos. It's also to prune or thin the tree after Shavuos. There are thus 3 shittas as to when one is allowed to prune or thin a tree to remove decay. Number 1, according to the Chacham of the Tana Kama, this may be done throughout the entire Shishas, the entire 6th year. Number 2, according to Rabbi Shua, it's permitted even during Shemitah. Number 3, according to Rabbi Shimon, it's mutter only until Shavuos of the 6th year. Mishnah Dalet. The Mishnah lists more activities that may be done during the entire 6th year. Mezab and asanatias. We may put manure on the trunks of young trees whose bark is peeling in order to heal the tree. The Mishnah is speaking of a case where the manure not only heals the tree but strengthens it as well. This is mutter before Shemitah. During Shemitah itself, however, only those activities that prevent loss are mutter, not those that improve the trees. Therefore, during the year of Shemitah, it's mutter to put manure on the tree only when it does no more than prevent the tree from dying, not when it also helps it grow. The Mishnah discusses young trees because they are treated with manure most often. However, the halach is the same for ilonos, not just for netios. The karchinoisan, we may wrap the trees to protect them from the heat or the cold. During Shemitah, however, it's also to wrap a tree with a cloth, although it's generally mutter to do work during Shemitah in order to save plants from a loss. The Rabbanon were not matter all malachas. Certain types of malachas are also even if they are done only to prevent loss. We put ashes on the roots of the trees to keep them moist. We make houses for them. We could build a small hut around the young tree to protect it from the rain and sun. This is forbidden during Shemitah itself because the extra shade will help the tree grow. And we may water them ad Rosh Hashanah until Rosh Hashanah, the Shemitah year. Rabbi Elazar says, Af mashka hu v'sanayf b'shviyas, one may water the branches of a tree even during Shemitah and allow the water to drip down to the roots, since this is not the usual way of watering a tree. Even though the person's intention is to help the tree grow, it's mutter, according to Rabbi Tzaddik, as long as he doesn't water it in the normal way. However, one may not water the root or trunk itself, since that is the normal way of watering a tree. Mishnah Hey. Sachin es hapagim. Figs are sometimes smeared with oil in order to speed up the ripening. The Mishnah discusses whether this may be done before or after Shemitah. During Shemitah, however, the Rabbanon asked for doing this because it's helping figs ripen is similar to planting. The Sachin es hapagim may smear oil on unripe figs of the 6th year so that they should ripen more quickly. You may make small holes in them and fill the holes with oil, which will help them ripen more quickly ad Rosh Hashanah, till Rosh Hashanah of the 7th year. The Mishnah is discussing figs that would normally ripen before Rosh Hashanah, whose ripening is delayed for some reason. Since they are produce of the 6th year, oiling them on the tree to speed up the ripening is mutter. Nevertheless, this may be done only for figs that will ripen before Rosh Hashanah of the 7th year. Pagei erev Shvius. However, unripe figs of the year before Shemitah that enter Shemitah, that they started growing in the 6th year but will not ripen until the 7th year. Here, the Mishnah is speaking about figs that normally ripen after Rosh Hashanah. As the Mishnah goes on to say, it's forbidden to oil or make holes in such figs during the 6th year, since this causes the figs to ripen more quickly during Shemitah. In actuality, these figs have the status of pre-Shemitah produce, since they sprouted before Shemitah. Although most other activities with pre-Shemitah produce are mutter, this activity was specifically prohibited by the Rabbanon. And unripe figs of Shemitah that have not yet ripened when the year after Shemitah arrives. The unripe figs of Shemitah that left to the year after Shemitah, that is, they started growing during the 7th year but will not ripen until the 8th year, do not have this kula. We may not smear oil on them or make holes in them and fill them with oil even before or after Shemitah. When figs start growing during Shemitah, they have Shemitah sanctity, even they have Kedusha Shvius, even after Shemitah ends. Therefore, even if the figs do not ripen during Shemitah, it is also to smear them or fill them with oil in the year after Shemitah, just as it is also during Shemitah. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, there's Machlekes. There's another Tana that argues that whether it is mutter to treat the figs with oil depends on where the figs are growing. Rabbi Yehuda says, Makom sheno golosoch, in a place where they normally smear the figs with oil, and tzachim mimnei she'avoda. They may not smear them with oil before Shemitah, if they will not ripen until Shemitah, because it's work that's normally done when growing figs. Makom sheno golosoch, but in a place where they do not normally smear figs with oil, tzachim, they may smear them with oil during the 6th year, even if the figs will not ripen until Shemitah begins, since such work is not normally done when growing figs. Even during Shemitah, smearing figs with oil is also only midrabanan. Rabbi Yehuda holds that even though it will help the figs ripen during Shemitah, the Rabbanon allowed smearing the figs during the 6th year in a place where it's not normally done. This is mutter, since in those places it does not give the appearance that he's doing a malacha. Rabbi Shimon mater be'ilan. Rabbi Shimon permits work on a tree during the year after Shemitah, even if it's still full of figs that grew during Shemitah, because one is allowed to work on trees when Shemitah is finished, even though the figs grew during Shemitah. Although the figs still have Kedusha Shvius, and smearing the figs is asur, Reb Shimon holds that it's mutter to do all the necessary work for the tree to help it grow during the year after Shemitah. The Tanakama, however, asks all types of work on a tree that has Shemitah figs on it even after Shemitah. This is because he holds that just as certain halachas of Shemitah apply before Shemitah begins, so too there are halachas of Shemitah that apply even after Shemitah has ended, which would be Matei Shvius. Ein noiten ve'ein Mishnah Vav. Ein noiten ve'ein mavrichen. It is also to plant trees during Shemitah. In addition, the Torah asks certain activities during the 30-day period before Shemitah. And planting trees is one such activity. This Mishnah discusses planting a tree or doing a similar act before that 30-day period if it will cause the tree to begin growing during the 30-day period. Ein noitin, we may not plant a tree. Ve'ein mavrichin, we may not layer a tree, that is to bend down a branch and bury it in soil so that a new tree grows from the branch. The branch stays connected to the first tree. Eventually, the part that is under the ground grows roots and can be separated from the original tree. Ve'ein markivin, and we may not graft it. That is, to take a branch from one tree and connect it to another tree. This can be done by making a hole in a tree and putting a branch that was cut from another tree of the same species into the hole. The branch will then get nourishment from the new tree, but will produce fruit that is similar to the tree from which it was cut. Grafting is often done when a tree produces low-quality fruit. By grafting a branch from another tree whose fruit is of higher quality, it will produce a higher quality fruit. Grafting a branch onto a tree of a different species is always asur because it's klayim. Our Mishnah is discussing someone who grafts onto another tree of the same min as we discussed in Masechta Klayim. Erev Shvius. So ein noitin ve'mavrich and ve'markivin Erev Shvius. One may not do any of these activities during the year before Shemitah. Pachas v'shleishim yoyim lefnei Rosh Hashanah. When there are less than 30 days left to the 30-day period before Rosh Hashanah. That is, there are less than 60 days until Rosh Hashanah. If a tree is planted, layered, or grafted during this time, it will bond during the 30-day period before Rosh Hashanah when planting is forbidden. If one did plant, layer, or graft a tree less than 60 days before Rosh Hashanah, Yakar, he must uproot it. This is a knas midrabanan. Rabbi Yehuda says, any graft that does not take hold within 3 days will never take hold, since it takes no more than 3 days for a graft to take hold. Therefore, it is mutter to graft a tree if there are more than 33 days to Rosh Hashanah, because it will then take hold before the 30-day period before Rosh Hashanah. The same is true of planting or layering a tree. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon say l'shtei Shabbosos, any graft that does not take hold within 2 weeks will never take hold. Therefore, it is also to plant, layer, or graft a tree less than 2 weeks before the 30-day period. However, one may plant, layer, or graft 45 days before Shemitah. Mishnah Zayin. In order to determine the status of produce that was planted in the 6th year, but did not finish growing until the 7th year, it's necessary to determine whether the produce is considered produce of the 6th year and has no kedusha shvius, or produce of the 7th year, which would have kedusha shvius. Similarly, regarding maasros, during the 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th year of the 7-year Shemitah cycle, maaser sheni is separated, which must be eaten in Yerushalayim. During the 3rd and 6th year of the Shemitah cycle, maaser oni must be separated instead. Therefore, in order to know which maaser to separate from produce that was planted in 1 year but did not finish growing until the next year, it is necessary to determine whether the produce is considered the product of the earlier year or the later year. The year in which the produce has grown is determined based on when the produce reaches a certain stage of growth. That stage of growth is different for different species. The status of grains, such as wheat or barley, depends on when it reaches a third of its growth. The status of fruit depends on when it first emerges from the tree. The status of vegetables depends on when they are picked. The Mishnah discusses an exception to this rule. So, oirez, v'hadoichan, rice and millet, v'haprogan, is poppy, v'hashumshimin, and sesame plants she'eshrichu l'fnei Rosh Hashanah, that took root before Rosh Hashanah, mis'asron l'she'ovar, are gemaisert as produce of the previous year, even though the produce did not actually grow until the following year. Thus, if, for example, they were planted during the 3rd year of the 7-year Shemitah cycle and took root before Rosh Hashanah, they are 3rd-year produce which is subject to Meiser Ani, even if they grew and were picked during the 4th year. Umutar Bashvias, similarly, if they were planted during the 6th year and took root before Rosh Hashanah of the 7th year, they are permitted during Shemitah, that is, they do not have Kedusha Shvius, even if they grew and were picked during Shemitah, even if they took root during the 30 days before Rosh Hashanah, when the field may no longer be worked, they do not have Kedusha Shvius. V'imla, but if they did not take root until after Rosh Hashanah, Asur B'Shvius, they are forbidden on Shemitah. That means that they have Kedusha Shvius. Similarly, with regard to determining the year of Maasros, they are gemaisert as produce of the following year. Thus, if, for example, they were planted in the 3rd year, but did not take root until after Rosh Hashanah of the 4th year, they are considered produce of the 4th year and are subject to Meiser Sheni. According to this Tana, rice, millet, poppy, and sesame are the only species whose status depends on when they take root. These species are different from others because their plants do not all grow at the same rate. For example, in a rice field, some plants will grow much more quickly than others, even if the entire field is planted at one time. If their status would be determined by when they reach a third of their growth or when they were picked, the crop that is harvested will contain a mixture of produce from different years. This can present a problem since each year's produce must be tied separately. Therefore, the Chachamim decided that the status of these species be determined based on when they take root. Since plants that are planted at the same time will take root at the same time, the entire crop will be from 1 year. Although the Chachamim were thus exempting the produce from certain maasros in which they may have been otherwise obligated, they had the right to do this since maaser of fruits, kidneys, and vegetables is midrabanon. Similarly, the case of Shemitah is speaking of Shemitah in our times, which is midrabanon, as we explained in the Hakdama to the Masechta.